In last week's playlist of episodes, we talked about YouTube poop. Let's see what you had to say. So first, before we do comment responses, I know I say this every time we try something new, but it really does mean a lot when we do something that is out of the ordinary and people express support and enjoyment of those things. So to everybody who was really excited to see another related videos playlist, thank you so much for saying so. Thank you for all of your excitement. It's very encouraging to us, and it makes the huge amount of work that goes into the playlist videos, really worth it. So just wanted to say thank you. It means a lot. And also, because there were so many videos as a part of the playlist, and also comments that were left on the videos that we didn't make or upload that were in the playlist, there were just lots and lots of comments for this episode, many of which were just really, really good. The conversation that happened around this set of videos was just outstanding. So we're not gonna be able to get to nearly all of the interesting things that you guys talked about in the various comment threads across all of these videos. So I would just highly recommend, if you have the extra time, just go and check out the comment threads of all of those videos and just give them a read. There's like high-minded, awesome, deep thinking, insightful stuff all over the place. Man, y'all are just so smart. On the subreddit, vegetablescorpion talks about two really interesting things related to YouTube poop. The first is Umberto Eco's idea of open works, which is that a work that is not complete until the audience is involved somehow. And they apply this to YouTube poop in a sense that it's kind of maybe meaningless until meaning is brought to it by the audience that kind of decodes it in some way. And I really like this idea of the YouTube poop as itself being a thing that has, either a hidden or obtuse meaning that you then have to decoder ring out of it. And I think that also speaks to the larger criticism that we'll get to in a little bit about how, why think critically about YouTube poop, because it's just meaningless. It's, people with computers just messing around. The other thing that Vegetable Scorpion talks about is a kind of cultural uncanny valley, and talking about how YouTube poop might just barely resemble the kinds of things that it uses as source, and in doing this, in sort of building its own language and its own system of meaning, like what we talked about with the YouTube poop techniques in the episode itself, shows how that construction, that rhetorical construction, as they put it, exists in popular culture as a whole as well. And open works, sort of cultural uncanny valley. I love both of these ideas. This was an awesome comment. We're gonna have a couple comments where all I really have to say is, this is great and I love it. Relatedly, sudo-shutdown talks about how the existence of YouTube poop might be something a little bit more sinister than a kind of thoughtful critique or criticism of the way popular culture is made. Rather, it is an effect of the almost force-feeding that we as members of popular culture have to go through. And YouTube poop is what happens when we are just force-fed hours and hours and hours of material and then are left to just kind of deal with it and digest it and do something with it. And so the poop, YouTube poop, is what results from that process. The relationship to pate here is also uncomfortable and weird, but I feel like I have to say it. Again, this comment, I love this comment. Link to this and all the others in the, where. Also on the subreddit, Mindmilk talks about the relatively low barrier to entry that comes with making a YouTube poop. And I think this is super important and a thing that I didn't talk about at all. And also, I think one of the reasons why the critique or criticism of popular culture at large that I see YouTube poop engaged in works the way that it does, because you can make a YouTube poop with, for lack of a better phrase, materials that are just around, assuming that you are, in this part of the world and of a certain, socioeconomic standing. But for the most part, you don't need any kind of specialized equipment or training. Everything is available. And so that allows you to engage in this conversation and to, work in that rhetorical space, like what Vegetable Scorpion was talking about, without having to prove yourself or expend a huge amount of extra resource. So yeah, this is a great and very important point. Alternatevil if you're serious, is this field research online, and can we read it? I would like to. Playdude92 talks about the relationship that YouTube poop has to comedy, and that ultimately seems to be the goal of the form, is to, we talked in the episode about lulz. It's about getting a reaction. And yeah, a lot of times that reaction is humor in some way, humor by way of a kind of audience abuse sometimes, so that's a little weird. But I also want to point out, on Twitter, Bracket Songs pointed me towards a series of King of the Hill themed YouTube poops that I'd never seen before, that, as they describe it, it's almost like YouTube poop art house film, and it is funny, but also really different, with a much different mood, but still recognizable as YouTube poop. So it's, yeah, I think that how comedy relates to YouTube poop is very complicated, especially in light of now having seen this particular thing, which we'll put a link to in the description. MorimotoYTP mentioned something that a lot of other people talked about, which is the relationship that YouTube poop has to Dada, specifically the Dada modernist art movement. And I just want to flag this and also connect it to a post that has been making its way around Tumblr about kind of, shit posting and related practices as being another form of internet Dada, so we'll put a link also to that post in the description. It's super interesting, has all kinds of smart people saying smart things. phoxxentswrath states, I think most civilly, a complaint that a lot of people had in the comments, which is, and I said we were gonna get to this, why would you think this way about a thing that is obviously meant to just be silly and meant to be people just kind of messing around? And the reason is that even though YouTube poop is meant to do one thing, and this is true for, pretty much every creative act, has one thing that it is maybe thought to do purposefully, it can also do an endless number of things at the same time, perhaps unintentionally, and that is the complexity and I think the interest in looking at and thinking about culture, that all of these things can have an expressed purpose, and then they can accomplish additional good, bad, neutral, whatever things besides that point. And it's the way all of their elements and all of their audiences and all of their creators and messaging interacts that create this complicated thing that lets us, have these, ask these really interesting questions and have these great conversations. So that's why. Elion 7x7, I repose a question that I have posed many times. Have you ever seen me and Michael from Vsauce in the same room? Maybe we are just the same, and it just was a Vsauce lean back. Major 95, usually about 10 days after the upload, and then I'll check in maybe like 6 months, maybe once a year. There are some videos whose comments I haven't read in quite a while, actually. I mean, we have a lot of videos. Martin Jolicoeur also raises another criticism of talking about YouTube poop, which is that it is dead in some way. And this is frustrating to me because even though YouTube poop might not be at the height of its popularity, it still exists. It still has an effect on communities on YouTube, on the internet. It still has had an influence on other ways of thinking about media, other ways of making media. And even if it's not at its height of popularity, it is still on the internet and a thing that people watch. So it's sort of like, saying like, should probably just stop writing papers about like Bach because he's, classical music is like pretty over. It's pretty done. And finally, TheREALGalamineGary, thank you very much. I also really like that shirt. It's a new one. My girlfriend's dad got it for me for Christmas, so I don't know exactly where it came from, but I'm pretty sure it came from an Urban Outfitters in London. Good luck.